labor and birth, no one talked about this enough. I think the thing that I hear is, oh my gosh, it's so much more mental than I thought it was going to be. The partners can do so much more, but they really think that they can't really do too much because it's not their body. Partners, if you're listening to this, there's a ton that you can do, and you will make her pregnancy feel so much more comfortable, so less anxiety ridden, and she'll just feel like, oh my gosh, we're in this together. I'm not in this alone.
Motherhood is all-consuming.
Having babies, nursing, feeling the fear of loving someone that much.
And there's this baby on your chest, and boom, your entire life has changed.
It's a privilege of being your child's safest space and watching your heart walk around outside of your body.
The truth is, I can be having the best time being a mum 1 minute, and then the next I'm questioning all my life choices.
I'm Lo Mansfield, your host of the Lo and Behold podcast. Mama of 4 littles, former labor and postpartum RN, CLC, and your new best friend in the messy middle space of all the choices you are making in pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. If there is one thing I know after years of delivering babies at the bedside and then having and now raising those 4 of my own, it is that there is no such thing as a best way to do any of this. And we're leaning into that truth here. With a mix of real life and what the textbook says, expert insights, and practical applications, each week we're making our way towards stories that we participate in, stories that we are honest about, and stories that are ours. This is the Lo and Behold podcast. If I had to pick let's say a vocabulary word to describe today's guest, I think it would be kindred spirit. Nina Spears is the founder and CEO of Baby Chick. She's the author of the Baby Chick Guide to Positive Pregnancy. She is, okay, get ready for this, a certified baby planner, a birth and postpartum doula, a childbirth educator, a newborn care educator, an infant massage instructor, and a perinatal nutrition expert. She is a lot of things and cares about all of these things for you, for your family. Over the past 15 years, she has supported more than 800 families in person, thousands and thousands and thousands more virtually through her educational content, her courses, and her resources. My guess is you have probably seen her or heard her online at some point and in some space. Her mission is to just transform how women prepare for motherhood by helping them prepare not just for birth, but for your full lifelong journey of becoming and being a mother. Nina, thank you so much for being with me here today. Why don't you go ahead and give us the I meet you in a coffee shop, how would you introduce yourself intro, and then we can get into our chat.
Oh my goodness. First, Lo, thank you so much for having me. Like I was just telling you, this is just so fun to be able to connect with you here. And oh my goodness, if you and I were just meeting at a coffee shop and you didn't know what I did, I would be like, well, I work with moms during pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and parenting. I am the founder and CEO of Baby Chick, which is a digital media resource for expecting and new parents. I've had the pleasure of helping over 800 families in person, thousands virtually, and been to over 350 births in multiple birth settings as a birth doula. But I'm not only a birth doula, I'm a baby planner, postpartum doula, childbirth educator, newborn care educator, infant massage instructor, and I'm recently a perinatal nutrition expert. And so literally I'm obsessed with supporting women, supporting moms. And yeah, it's just my everything pretty much.
I feel like I would have heard the first sentence where you're like, I work with moms. And I immediately would have been like, oh, me too. Then the last sentence where you're like, and I'm obsessed, and then say, oh, me too. Yeah. But it's like all this stuff that you do. And then the culmination of all of that is just like, I'm just obsessed with this birth and baby space. And I want to help you walk through it. Like, that's kind of what I hear.
Yeah.
When you give the elevator pitch,
and it's so funny that people will ask me like, oh, you probably totally got into this like once you had babies and like, something just happened. Either it was like amazing or not so amazing and you wanted to like make a difference for other women. And it's so funny. I was like, oh no, I totally found this well before I even knew my husband. And so I've been doing this for like 15 years now, 15 and a half. And it's been so cool. And I just feel so lucky that this found me before I became a mom, because wow, did it like really prepare me for what I was getting myself into. I mean, to a certain extent, I feel like God still throws some things your way to just keep you humble, but I still, man, it was, yeah, it's been quite a journey and I've loved it.
It's interesting. I just like how you just said it found you, because I feel very much the same about my own journey. Like there were things going on with my mom that like pushed me towards healthcare and considering the way that those who work in healthcare can impact the people who end up in front of them.
Yeah.
But there was this like circuitous route. But as soon as I landed in L&D, pre-kids, pre-marriage, all the same things, like there, it was like, this is it for me. And I tell Kelvin now, my husband now, and we have 4 kids, like I will be 78 and still be like, honey, can I help you with breastfeeding? You know, I just like picture myself still like, you want to talk about second night syndrome? Like I just think it will never, that desire to just sit in this space and be with someone. Obviously, I'm not like having the child, but be with them. I just don't know that it'll go away. Yeah, it's like you said, it found me.
It's kind of like the priesthood, I think. Like it either is like the most amazing and beautiful thing you've ever seen, or you're like, oh my gosh, absolutely not. Like it is definitely a calling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as nurses that can be so true for us too, of like,
yeah,
the niche, you know, the different groups of nurses are like, oh, I could never do ER. And, oh, I could never do L&D. But it's like a very real thing. Like if you're in L&D, you're probably there because you want to be there. And if you're not, you're getting the heck out of there as fast as you can. So
exactly.
Yes, very, very true.
And that's so funny because my dad is a retired surgeon and my mom is a retired nurse. And I just sitting at the dinner table, like hearing the latest operation and going to the hospital and all this stuff, I was like, that is the last thing I want to do. No, thank you. So I went to like college and studied business and corporate communication and all of these things. And then it came around and I was like, oh man, I ended up back in the
But I'd still say you're using all that stuff to run a business. I mean, you're running this massive business too. You just found the niche inside of which to run
that
business. So it came full circle. All right. So you mentioned when you were saying, I did not have like this amazing story or this really bad story to like push me into this desire. But I feel like that's a great segue of just this idea of, we know that birth, pregnancy, and postpartum, really all of these seasons, for some are really incredible. For some are really hard. For some, I'd say for most, it's both, like we have these highs and these lows. So I think when we're pregnant, and I'm sure you would attest to this both personally and then anecdotally or professionally with those you work with, there's this big mental load that kind of immediately lands on our shoulders. Well, like when we're expecting. And then obviously as we continue to parent, and there's 10,000 things we're supposed to be doing right and wrong and, all the things. So how do you kind of like, let's say, walk through with a client or someone inside of your communities, just that idea of addressing this mental load of pregnancy? What does that look like? What does that maybe entail for us? And then what do we do about it when we're kind of standing at the precipice? That sounds so dramatic. But when we're at in those early days and we're going, okay, here comes kind of the onslaught.
It's so true. Oh my gosh, Lo, great question. Love this, because what you just described before, I think we hear on social media and through other moms, this invisible mental load that we are carrying. The thing is, we're not discussing enough how this really does start during pregnancy, if not before pregnancy.
Yeah.
But for sure, when you see that positive pregnancy test, you are the one that's then have this list of to-dos of things that you can and cannot do, appointments you need to attend, pediatrician you need to choose, maybe childcare. And usually, I'm not saying I don't want to generalize because every family is different and I love that. But usually the ones that I work with, the woman or the birthing person is the one that is choosing all of these things because she has a certain way of how things want to go. And all of a sudden she is carrying this mental load during pregnancy. The problem that I see with this, Lo, is that when we make sure that, we're getting all of our ducks in a row and getting things the way we want to and not incorporating our partners during pregnancy, we're already setting ourselves up to become the default parent. We're already setting ourselves up to continue carrying that mental load and being that project manager for the entire household. So if you do not start sharing these responsibilities during pregnancy, oh my goodness, it's only going to catch up to you and continue carrying on throughout your postpartum and motherhood journey. So I really encourage that as soon as you decide you're going to start a family, or as soon as you find out your family is growing, to bring in your partner and start having discussions then on how you're going to divide those responsibilities when it comes to making those choices for your family, household responsibilities, your expectations. Because I think, especially if this is your first child, how you were raised might have some influence, usually does, on what you think is normal or what you want for your family. And your partner, vice versa. They might think, oh, well, of course you're going to stay home with the kids once you have a baby, but maybe you really love your career. And you're like, well, no, I plan on taking some time, of course, but then I want to go back to work. Or, maybe you really want to breastfeed, but the partner's like, but I really want to help with the feedings too. So I really think we should do formula so I can help you so you can get more sleep. So again, having these conversations during pregnancy is a lot, in my opinion, better and easier to have than waiting until you're both living in it and exhausted. Because when you're exhausted, oh my gosh, that's affecting your prefrontal cortex, that's affecting your empathy, that's affecting your logic, that's affecting so many different things. And that can make anger, resentment, just being short, it just makes things a little bit more stressful. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think making sure that we cover certain topics during pregnancy and earlier than you think is really key. So then that way everyone has their expectations set out. We know how we can help. We know that it's not just reliant on one person, the pregnant person to do all of this work and really distribute, all of these responsibilities.
So, what would you say to kind of, let's say, the practical truth that there is that bit of let's say I'm the one pregnant right now, but I do have to do more of the work, right? Like it is my body that's changing. I'm the one who
Totally.
has to go to the appointments. I know my answer to this question I have for you is kind of like, oh, let's just make sure we're communicating, right?
Yes.
But practically speaking, what does this kind of look like? Or maybe what are some specific topics? I know you kind of threw
Yeah.
a few in there already, where you can just keep bringing them in. Because at the end of the day, sometimes it's just, hey, I want to share what's going on right now with you, just so you understand not the burden I'm carrying, but how much, my brain is thinking about. Because if we're not saying those things, then they don't know, them being the
Correct.
other one who's going to parent. And it's not necessarily their fault if they're not taking on the load. I'm air quoting for those of you who can't see, because if we're not sharing, it's just this default setting that happens. So are there
For sure.
specific, like let's say in pregnancy, like specific
Yeah.
scenarios or times during pregnancy, appointments where you say, hey, here's a great time to be like, hey, guess what's going on right now? Let's talk about this. What do you think about this? I want you to know about this.
Definitely. Absolutely. So that's actually the reason why in my book I included each week partner tips, because I wanted them to know exactly certain things they can do and bring up and help with each point of the
Participate.
pregnancy, because
Yeah.
you are not the only one that should be carrying this pregnancy on your own. But for example, so just you were saying like practical tips on what, some ideas that partners can do. For example, okay, she needs to start taking a childbirth class. Partner, maybe you do the research on what's local, what's digital, and figure out, okay, these are the different options that work for our timeline, that work for what she's really wanting, and I can present this to her. Maybe she's stressed out on, oh, she has to research the strollers and the car seats and all that stuff. Maybe you should do some of that research and say, hey, I did some research on these. I feel like these are really good. You can look at them and see which ones stand out to you. Maybe you can look at some prenatal yoga classes, find those for her, schedule a prenatal massage for her and say, you know what, I think it's important for you to get this like at least once every other month or something like that. Or I found these prenatal chiropractors. Maybe go to a couple appointments with her, bring some questions, ask and build that relationship with her primary care provider as well. So then that way you're not just meeting for the very first time. in the labor and delivery room. So I think there is so much more that you can do. You can also encourage, like, hey, you know what? After a long day, let's go on a walk. I know that research shows that walking like 30 minutes a day during pregnancy is really important. So let's just debrief, get some fresh air, vitamin D, and go outside for a walk for a bit. Encourage her to stay active, to find the resources that are going to be beneficial to her. Maybe she's experiencing a lot of anxiety, encouraging her to talk to a therapist or her therapist if she has one. But partners, oh my goodness, you could even like go to the store and make sure that the pantry is always stocked with like her favorite pregnancy cravings. Literally, the list is endless. Like, you can do so much to make things more comfortable and less overwhelming for her so that she's not constantly going through things. Even like the pediatrician, you can say, oh, I talked to our friends. These are the ones that they go to. And also here's some like concierge pediatricians. So what are you leaning more towards? And I can set up some consultations if those are available. I mean, the list is endless. The partners can do so much more, but they really think that they can't really do too much because you're right. It's not their body. They're not the one that's, feeling all of these pregnancy symptoms, and they're not the one that's going to be going into labor. But oh my goodness, you can also start preparing for how you can best support her during labor and preparing for how you can best support her during postpartum, because I don't think you should be doing a crash course for either of those and trying to figure it out in the moment. So, oh my goodness, partners, if you're listening to this, there's a ton that you can do, and you will make her pregnancy feel so much more comfortable, so less anxiety ridden, and she'll just feel like, oh my gosh, we're in this together. I'm not in this alone.
I feel like we can take the last 2 minutes and make that a soundbite, and then people can send it to people. Because I do think there's this idea of, I don't want to say a cop out. I don't think they're all just like, well, I can't do anything because I'm not the one pregnant. But I do think there's this idea of like, I can't take the pregnancy away from you. So this is just for you. And so that idea of almost reframing for the birth partner, I can't be the one pregnant, but I can do this. And then figuring out like what this is, which you just listed like 18 different things, right? And there's obviously more. I do also love the idea of them being the one to look into birth education, because if everyone was listening closely, what you then said right after that was, because then you can think about like what type of birth she's wanting. And that's going to then like really enmesh you in what she's wanting, what the goals are, how that includes you. So it's not just like, hey, I'm going to go Google birth class close to me. First, you're going to have to do the work to figure out what kind of birth is being envisioned and hoped for. And that's just going to serve both of you so well. Yes. So I love saying, actually, no, I want you to figure out birth education options. And before you do that, let's chat. I just think, it's such a great job to give them. And I don't know that we give that away very often, but maybe we should be giving that one away a lot more.
I think we should, because I think that if they were doing the research and then finding the class, and I think that they would be a lot more participative and excited to go because it was their thing that they're contributing,
Yeah, no, definitely. I wanted to have my kids unmedicated. That was my goal. And so my husband, Kelvin, and I did a birth class, and I sought out the class. But there was this bit of, I just remember these conversations, even before the class, of, hey, this is the way I'd like to do it. Him almost being like, well, why? Like, why would you, quote unquote, put yourself through that? If that sounds a little freaky or like extra painful, I don't get it, And so there was those really good, in my opinion, really great conversations before we ever went to class of like, hey, this is the goal. This is why it's important to me. And then when we got to this class that supported that goal, it was so much easier to get him on board. So we didn't do it the way you just laid out, and that I think would be amazing. But it was those conversations early on of like, here's my vision and my hope. And then he like stepped into that vision, then finding a class that supported that vision for us. So it didn't happen on that perfect timeline, but I do think that can happen, right? But we've got to get them on board and give them the opportunity to understand why we're hoping for what we're hoping for, hearing what they have to say as well about their vision, or if they have a vision, and then finding the education that really serves the two of you for where you're kind of landed. So good. Everyone, good.
I can relate to that totally, Lo, because like when I was getting serious with my now husband when we were dating, I told him, hey, by the way, if we decide to like do this and have kids together, I will be having our babies at home. And we were in the car. And
I love that
he
you
was-
had this combo dating. That feels like
Sorry.
impressive to me.
I'm the baby chick. You
It's
should know
important.
this. Like,
Yeah, true.
I was like, so we're gonna have this. So we were talking about something. Probably I was at a birth or something, and then I brought it up. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna bring this up. If we decide to do this, I'm gonna have our babies at home. And he looked at me. He was driving, and I was in the passenger seat. And he looked at me and he goes, "Oh, why do you have to be so weird?"
Exactly. You're like,
And then
okay,
I
we need
came
to
back
address
with,
that.
well, excuse me, and listed this whole thing. But if I had waited till, after we were married, like just about to have kids, like he would have never been warmed up to this.
Hey, friend, quick pause for just a second. If you are listening to this podcast because you want to feel more prepared, more confident, and less freaked out about birth, that is exactly why I created the Your Body, Your Birth course. This birth course will not tell you what kind of birth you should want, and nobody has the right to do that. It is about helping you understand what's happening in your body, what your options actually are, and how to walk into your birth feeling grounded, excited, ready, instead of overwhelmed and scared. When you have education like this, everything changes. Your mindset, your conversations with your care team, and the birth experience itself. No more relying on random opinions, okay? Stop scrolling. Take intentional action with me and start trusting your body, your voice, and your decisions today. Head over to www.thelabormama.com/birth, also linked in your show notes, and be sure to use the code podcast at checkout to save 20% and start working towards this better birth for you right now. Okay, let's get you back to the episode.
And I cannot tell you how many times, I don't know if you've experienced it on your side as an L&D nurse, Flo, but as a doula, I'll have clients who I work with and she's like, I really want a home birth, but my husband won't let me. And then they feel like they have to compromise that wish and go to the hospital, even though that's not where they necessarily want to go, because that's what makes their husband or partner feel more comfortable. And that's where I'm like, if we could have these conversations earlier, you could get on a more just even playing field of really getting to know without like the time pressure of we need to choose a provider. And you know what I mean? There's a timeline after that point. And I think if we talked about these things before, it would maybe warm them up to the idea. Because at the end of the day, I also feel like, girl, it's your body. And you're the one that's going to go through all of this. But I understand, like, I want partners to be comfortable too. But yeah, I see a lot of women changing their decision because of what makes their partner feel more comfortable.
It's interesting that you just said your husband's response was, that's weird. Because I think a lot of birth stuff, if they either don't have any exposure or, I mean, obviously you had endless amounts of education before you even were the one having the baby. But my mom was similar when I told her that I wanted to see midwives, which is like not weird at all.
Why would you
right?
do that?
But she was like, oh, is that safe? And it makes me, that made me think of your
yeah.
husband. Just this idea of, I would say a decent majority of the population is misinformed, not because they've chosen not to learn something. It's just like, why do they know about the birth world anymore? And my mom was
Right.
still thinking about, maybe lay midwives from olden times.
Yes,
Like that whole
yeah.
vision was still in her
Mhm.
head. And so some simple education, I literally was like, Mom, I work with certified nurse midwives every day. Like, this is what it looks like. They can do all the things OBs can do except surgery. I just was like, it's really easy to explain. And so I think, again, like with your husband as well, like, let's just explain some stuff that people simply just don't know unless they're in the world. And then we can keep talking about it and going from there. So yeah, I think like you said, the sooner you have conversations like that, just the more warmed up they're going to be. And it's just going to be a lot easier to come to places where you're both like, oh, okay, I see where you're coming from. That actually makes sense to me. That's not weird. It's a logical choice as well. Like just getting to that common ground would be probably a lot easier with those little
if you talk to
sprinkled
my
combos.
if you talk to my husband now, he's like, the only place, if we get pregnant again, we are only having home births because I've had both of my kids at home. He's like, oh no.
He's
like,
a convert,
absolutely.
a full
he
convert.
Is a true convert. He's like, this is the best. Why would it? And so it's just funny how you can go from one extreme to the other.
Well, but I like, this is a kind of segue into this question I had for you as well. But this idea of it's just information, right? Like so many people are just missing information. But my question around that, a very broad idea of information is like, how do you dance the line, or what do you suggest for dancing the line between information overwhelm versus, taking in information is really good, but then this is what you do with it, or like, here's the next step. Because I think if we just say, hey, turn into a vacuum and start sucking in information, that doesn't end well for anybody. So what do
No.
they do to bridge the gap between I need information and I need to be able to make choices
Yeah,
with that
absolutely.
information?
Yeah, well, we live in unprecedented times, Lo. Like, oh my gosh, we have access to so much information. It's just, we're inundated by it on social media and AI. I mean, it's just constant. And then not only that, just the opinion of everyone around you, hearing like what worked for them. And that can sometimes really dim your own intuition and your own desires and really what you want. So whenever someone gets to this point in their life when they're like, okay, I think we're ready to, start trying, or hey, we just found out we're expecting, I really encourage them to find the people that really speak to you and like your values, your goals, and just listen to that. Like make sure that they are, knowledgeable and evidence-based and all these things. But at the same time, like you don't need to listen to everything. I think that's when it gets really overwhelming, like you said, just being a vacuum and trying to consume it all. Like, if you're like, oh, I found Lo, she is awesome. This is the information that I want. Like, then stick to listening to Lo. Like, don't try and listen to everybody. Like, you can kind of take bits and pieces, but I really think finding your people and saying, like, okay, these are the influencers or educators. Because when people are like, oh, you're an influencer, I'm like, that's a nice word, but I really prefer to call myself an educator.
I'm the same. I'm always like, I'm an online educator. Not the
Exactly.
other one.
Not the other one.
Not
Exactly.
that
So
it's
I'm
bad,
like,
just not what I'm
no,
doing.
exactly. Not what I'm trying to do. So that's where I'm like, oh, try and find, yes, the educators that just you feel like I like their energy. I like their belief system. I like how just their whole philosophy on things, and really stick to that. Name just a couple. And then that way you can, because I don't know about you, Lo, but I love it when someone like sends me a DM, asks me a question, like I get involved. But if people are just trying to listen to everyone and not really taking in the information from one good source or a couple good sources, I think you're missing out on the good stuff. You could like really grow that relationship and learn more and really thrive in the things that are most valuable to you.
I am a big encourager of kind of, some people are like, I have no idea what's in front of me,
Yeah.
or I have no idea what's going on for labor. And so it's like, yeah, let's get you a general outline. Let's, teach you some foundational basics, certainly. But
Yeah.
after we've done that, or maybe you're already in that place, I'm a big believer on this idea of like honing in on the things that matter to you. And I think a
Yes.
lot of that comes when we do kind of pare down who we're listening to, because if we keep ourselves really open to everyone, we're going to think, oh, should I be worrying about perineal massage? I didn't really care about that. I actually felt like comfortable just leaving that one off to the side. And now this
Right.
person's making me feel like if I don't do it, I'm going to have a 7th degree tear, which isn't a real thing.
Oh my
But you
God.
know what I mean? And so I think that like sometimes I'm saying like, if you don't care about that IV in labor, move on. Check, like
Yeah.
you're going to have one, move on. You don't need to like listen to any more conversation about it. Like you've already
Yeah.
made your decision. Like, what do you care about? And let's like deep dive that. And so giving yourself kind of some anchors for the things that matter to you, and knowing that it's okay to not, everything doesn't have to matter. Everything doesn't have to
Yeah.
be this massive decision. You can feel, you can go with immediate intuition. You can go with a provider's suggestion when you trust them and you're like, okay, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'm going to follow that plan of care and let's talk about this because I really care about this one though,
Totally.
And I just think we
Totally.
don't always feel like we have that freedom, or we give ourselves that freedom to say, oh, my best friend cares about that one. I don't really care about it. So I'm
Yeah.
talking about this instead. And so I think that information overload can be really pared down when we pare down who we listen to, or kind of niche down who we listen to, like you said. And then also recognizing we don't have to deep dive every single thing
Exactly.
to have, let's say, that ideal experience that we're looking
Exactly.
for.
Yeah. And I think that also, like, if something is said that just doesn't sit well with you and you are like concerned about it, like, you do your own fact checking. Don't just take what someone says as Bible. Figure out what sits right with you. But I totally agree. I think that just finding the people who are really knowledgeable and are in the same path that you're in, like it's going to just feel a lot better for you.
It's such a fine line between ownership, right? Because we need your
Yes.
ownership and participation, or else you're going to say that just happened to me and I don't like how it felt. And I wasn't
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
also recognizing you don't have to take on this burden of knowing everything an OB, a
Everything.
midwife, and a doula know. And so, I
Yeah.
mean, probably that's going back to surrounding yourself with good people, leaning into your own intuitions. Like, yeah, it's a fine line to thread, but I do think it's important to recognize
Yes.
you're not capable of genuinely leaning into every topic and being an expert. And so, how do we
Especially
surround
within
ourselves
40
with
weeks. Like, no.
no, Lord, no. Well, and that's like so sweet, right? When you have that second baby and you're like, okay, cool. I learned a lot with that one. Now I'm going to hone in on what I like was lacking on.
Right.
That sweet wisdom we pull forward is so nice for a second or a third, etc. baby.
So
Okay,
true.
so I want you to get specific for me. And obviously, other people might answer this question differently, but what are some, for the families you've been bedside with or births you've attended, people you've been like intimately spending time with when they're having that baby? What are some of those, like, how come no one told me this things that you feel like maybe pop up more often? And I'd say particularly like for labor and birth. So things maybe people are like, oh, maybe I need to put a pin in that and dig
Yeah.
into that a little more.
Specifically when it like labor and birth, no one talked about this enough. I think the thing that I hear is, oh my gosh, it's so much more mental than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was preparing like this physical event, which you are. Like it's definitely, we want to practice that strength and mobility and flexibility. But oh my goodness, it is so much more mental. So I think I hear that. Like I didn't realize how much my breath and my mind would be truly the things that help carry me through to the next stage of labor, whether you want to get that epidural or whether you don't, you want to go completely unmedicated and, then hold your baby. So I think that is the main thing that I hear about, wow, I didn't recognize how much more mental it would be and how much I would be leaning on the support people around me. The support people around me were truly significant. And thank God I had a doula, or thank goodness my husband and I went to this class, or my partner and I went to this class and did this course together. And thank goodness, like my provider and I are completely on the same page and that they were on call, thank goodness, and thank goodness I had this angel of a nurse who like totally was like helpful and in it with me. Like, I think all of that, they didn't realize how, that's another thing. They don't realize how much their nurse is really like the star. They're like, oh, but I chose this great doctor. I'm like, cool, youuld see them maybe twice.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
So really,
It does matter a little.
It does matter a little when it comes to like the delivery.
I think it matters in all the moments getting to your labor at the hospital. And then
Right.
the nurse is such a huge chunk of those, 48 hours or whatever.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. I mean, as a doula, oh my gosh, I'll go into a hospital and I'll be like, oh my gosh, so-and-so's on call. Like, or so-and-so's at the desk. Like, let's see if we can get one of her rooms. Like it's just a totally different experience when you have like a rock star of a nurse. So that's another thing. But I do want to say, I know it's not with like pregnancy and birth, but postpartum. I think that even though, oh my gosh, Lo, I will like, they'll be like, no one told me enough how like hard postpartum was going to be. And I was like, literally, I did. I literally told you that this was the one to really focus on. And that's why when people are like, oh, I started taking my childbirth education course like 32, 34 weeks. I'm like, okay, great, let's do this. If I could ideally pick the time, I would say really preparing in your second trimester and practicing and revisiting these things all throughout. So then that way, your third trimester, you focused on your postpartum period and really getting that together, like building your village, having those conversations, stocking that freezer, getting all of your resources, meaning like your lactation consultant, your pelvic floor therapist, your chiropractor, your like whatever it is, like all lined up. So you know who you can lean on when things get challenging, So yeah, I think those are the main things that people will tell me, oh, no one told me about this. What about you? I'm curious, like, is there anything that stood out to you?
I agree with the mental one for sure. I think what's challenging about that one is that people go, okay, so how do I prepare mentally? And that's where sometimes I think people can check out because it's not like do this 5 times a day, 3 times a week, and you will be prepared mentally. And I think
Right.
so. I feel like we default to, I'm going to do optimal fetal positioning exercises, 5
Yeah.
times a week and yay me. And that's really important. What's one of my favorite ways to prep your body for birth, honestly, is to focus on those things. So I'm not diminishing that at all. But I think the mental prep conversation and that feeling of like, man, I just didn't realize how important that is can be said prenatally. And then a lot of people are like, okay, yeah, okay, I got it. I need to be strong. And then it's like they don't know how to actually get to that place or what that actually means. Or we just gloss over it because you're like, I get it. I get it. I've got to be strong. I got to know how to breathe. And so I think that what I've just found, and this is particularly in educating others of like, no, 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 you do not get to skip past these conversations about fear and how it impacts you, what you're going to do when you're scared of something. Like, what are the conversations you're shying away from? How are we going to think about those? Because like, to me, it's that cliche. We're creating this mental toughness, right? And so you feel really capable to then utilize whatever tools come next, but not until your brain, I guess that like feels a little clinical, your brain, but like till what's going on in your mind is really, really strong.
For
And
sure.
so I agree with that. And my follow-up question to you was going to be, what are like quick tips for someone when they say, if birth is 90% mental, please tell me what to do next to prepare for that 90%. So that's really what I was thinking about. Like, I agree, but tell me what your answer is to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, that can be really difficult for someone to wrap around like, all right, how do I strengthen this? Well, I first am like, okay, if you had menstrual cramps, how did you kind of get yourself through it? You would get like a heating pad, you would work on your breath, you would probably close your eyes and just get through whatever the cramp was. Well, imagine yourself like going through this in labor and things getting more intense. Where are you going in your mind? And the only thing is our mind is, think of it as like a muscle. The more that we practice this, the more it will get stronger and we can start getting to this place a bit easier. So that's why a lot of people do, go into like the hypnobirthing. But I also think that like just meditation and practicing those cues to get yourself into a more calm, relaxed state can be so powerful. Even like a lot of my clients love when I will read a script to them and they can close their eyes and do this like visualization technique. And so they can like visualize themselves. But the more that you practice listening to that visualization prompt, the more you can get yourself to that spot a lot faster rather than, oh, I'm going to, listen to this meditation for the first time when I'm also experiencing contractions. That can be really hard. So if you start listening to these meditations and these different cues that can help you get into a more relaxed state, I think that can be so powerful. Also, like repeating things when you're practicing with your partner, because yes, I really do think that you should practice how you are going to handle a contraction together with your partner. So like what position changes you're going to do, how are they going to support you physically, what are they going to say to you? So certain things, like I'll tell clients, like maybe not the word relax, like we don't necessarily like to be told to relax in this moment, more like release and open and things like that. And when you put like your hand on her shoulder, these kind of cues, if you practice them over and over again when she's in labor, it will start triggering your mind to relax and open and release your muscles and all of these things. But again, you have to practice those things. And that's why I say, if you can learn these things in the second trimester, and then you have the rest of the second trimester and your third trimester to practice those things, oh my gosh, when you're in it, it's going to come just like more like second nature to you. So yes, I'm really big on listening to different meditations, practicing cues. I love a good mantra, like mantras throughout that you can have around you, have your partner say, you repeat. And yeah, breath work, practicing that breath work, that 360 breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, however you want to call it, so good. But those are just some things immediately that come to my mind.
That's great. It makes me think of, so I like the ice trick for labor.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are like, that's not labor. Contractions don't hurt like that. I'm
Well,
like, that's not the point. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like people miss it. I'm like, I'm not saying this is that painful. Maybe for some people
No.
it is. It's not. But what it is going back to what you just said. This is work about figuring out where your mind goes when you're uncomfortable. That's it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so do you start shaking your hand? Are you wiggling around? Do you forget to breathe? Again, labor is harder. Like
Yes.
that's not a discussion to me that's really relevant. But we're just talking about you being aware of what you do with your body or where your mind goes when you're not totally comfortable, right? And so I
Yes.
think I love that trick or game or tool, however, whatever you want to call it, because I want people to start being aware of what they do when when they aren't comfortable. And
Oh, for
then the
sure.
practice can step in where you're like, okay, yeah, like my hand's a little uncomfortable from holding these ice cubes. So just work on some deep breathing, right? Or like, does some music help? Like, yeah, you can start to throw those things in. Again, knowing, yeah, labor
Exactly.
is going to be a lot harder. But I just don't know that most of us are really that aware of what we do with our bodies when we're uncomfortable. And so I think if we can put ourselves in some situations like this that are safe to do so and go, oh,
Yes.
like I'm uncomfortable, how am I going to handle this? Right. Or
Yeah.
even how you said, how have you handled periods in the past? Like I can think back to painful periods for myself and I'm bent over, hands on knees, like deep breathing. Like, what am I doing with my body? Was I practicing
Exactly.
for labor? No, I wasn't thinking about that at all. But it's just like trying to really zero in on what your tendencies are and if they
Yeah.
maybe aren't going to be helpful for labor, like what are some that are going to be helpful, and then start practicing them even in these situations that are not the same as an 8 centimeter contraction,
Uh,
just, yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
I'm so glad you brought that exercise up with the ice because actually it just made me think of like one of my clients where she did the ice practice and she was like, Nina, I thought like, you've talked to me all about like, I could have a mantra. I could be doing like swaying my hips, like moving, motion is lotion, right? She was like, I'm going to breathe a certain way. I'm going to say this mantra. And then she goes, when I was doing that ice practice, I could only do one thing. I could not focus on all three things. I thought I was going to be able to use all of these tools. So that's another thing that I want like your listeners to hear is that sometimes when you're going through that, sometimes just focusing on one thing to get you through and use that until it maybe stops working, like it's not as effective, then switch that up with something else. So maybe that is a position change and some movement. Maybe that is a different like breathing practice. Maybe that is a different mantra. Maybe that is incorporating massage. So that's the reason why we teach you like all of these tools. It's not necessarily to use them all at once because that
no,
can be
not at
really
all. Yeah,
overstimulating, but it's to then say like, okay, this, I was writing this and doing great with this one tool, but it's now not working as effectively. So I'm going to try something else. So it just made me think of that. One
yeah,
of my clients saying that to me, and I was like, I was like, yeah, you can't have a mantra while you're breathing, while you're like moving your
no.
hips while holding that. Like that's hard.
Yeah, that's funny. I had Jen Hamilton on a few episodes ago, and she said this idea of like, don't blow your load early, essentially meaning like, don't use your best tool when you're 1 centimeter, particularly depending on what
Oh,
your
totally.
goals are, right? So if you want to go unmedicated, don't get in the tub at 1 centimeter because you might want to save the tub for 7 centimeter or whatever, that type
Yeah.
of idea. But you just made me think of that of like, the job for you, when those first contractions hit, and I would say, and for the birth partner, because they can be so supportive in
Yeah.
helping you with these tools, is not to be like, all right, let's turn the music on. Here's your comb. I'm massaging you. I attached your TENS unit. Like, space these things out. See what
Yes.
works for a moment, like you
Yes.
said. And then if you're like, nope, I'm getting to the point where I can't do this anymore and this way, well, then maybe that's when we add something new and really looking at it as more of like, every mile on the road, maybe you come across a different tool and start utilizing it as opposed to, throwing it all in at the very beginning. And I would
Oh, for
say that
sure.
can be
Oh,
dependent on goals, right? Or what, if you're just like, I just want to get to 4 centimeters and get my epidural, like then maybe you are throwing it in earlier. So having your goals helps and then recognizing, like what's going to feel valuable for you and what are you capable of like doing all at once for sure. It's
oh,
really good advice.
definitely. And I love that also for partners because I actually say that to partners. I'm like, maybe don't do the double hip squeeze like when she's 1 centimeter. Like
Yeah.
save that because you are going to be sore, sir. You are going to be
Yes.
so
Yes,
tired
they
and
are.
sore, and she's going to need it like towards the end. So like maybe just like some light back rubs in the beginning, like work your way up too, not just mama.
Well, it makes me think of that going back to our pregnancy conversation of going, I can't do XYZ right now, but I can do this. And so for that birth partner, having a really good idea of, hey, the stages of labor, they get harder and they get more intense. So, in these early ones, like maybe here's half a dozen things I would do. And then, unless she were to ask for or really show me I need the next thing, like, then I know I'm going to hold these ones for later. And having that kind of knowledge to go, tools, interventions are on this list, kind of some stages of labor, understanding of pain and emotions on this list. And then, this means you got to get some education birth partner, but being able to put those together so you understand
For
how
sure.
to be valuable in the different kind of stages or moments of labor, because the ways you add value might change a little bit as labor progresses. It will change, not might. They
Yeah.
will change. So yeah. I think the last thing, I'll just circle back. We can end here on this because you asked like postpartum, going back to that idea of like things we didn't feel prepared for. I think the one that my kind of heart almost instantly went to is I just wasn't prepared for actually how lonely it could feel. And I don't know that there's like specific ways to prepare you listening for that, except for you to just understand that's a, like a normal feeling, and that you're not the only one feeling it, and that you can have a baby on your chest and still feel that loneliness. So knowing like you're not crazy, or however you want to say that. And then also talking about that, getting out of the house and maybe plopping your booty at the park down the street and taking yourself and baby out, and just kind of not hunkering down in your home feeling lonely, particularly if that really doesn't feel good to you. I had friends having babies all around me. Like, I was surrounded by people in a similar stage of life, and it still felt really lonely at different points. I mean, it still can, to be honest. And my kids are
Yeah,
different ages and all of
totally.
that. But I think in those immediate days, there was this, sometimes it was so sweet, like I'm up at night with my babies, and other times I'm like, in theory, I know there's a million other moms up right now with their babies, and man, I feel so alone at 2 a.m. And so
For sure.
I think that is that first time experiencing that type of loneliness, when maybe you're thinking, I shouldn't feel lonely right now. So yeah, it was a shock a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. And you're 100% not the only person who feels that. Walking into so many homes as a postpartum doula, and women, they don't immediately tell me that. They usually wait a couple weeks to start opening up and sharing how they really feel. And they're like, "Wow, yeah, this is so lonely. I just feel like I'm all alone in this." And whenever I do have the ability to work with them prenatally, I actually kind of, it sounds very aggressive, but I almost force all of my clients to make a postpartum plan.
Yeah.
And in my postpartum plan, I have a part where I make you write out who are the people that you can call during the daytime, and who are the people that you can call during the nighttime when you're struggling. And obviously ask those people for permission. Like, hey, can you be one of my people that I add on my list that I can reach out to and call if I'm just having a hard time? And if I find a mom who is similar to you, who has like other women who are in the same similar stage, I then encourage them, can you please create a group text message chat? And then that way you guys can have your like do not notify, like no notifications ding off. But if someone else is up at 2 a.m, like you can send a text and be like, hey, who else? This is little one is, just cluster feeding tonight. Then you can literally have then a conversation a little bit of like what's going on. But I know that sometimes it can feel like, oh, but if I, and I don't even want to call it complaining, it's just like
Yeah.
explaining how you're feeling in the moment, and the overwhelm and the exhaustion, and you're still so grateful for that baby. And I tell people like both of those feelings can coexist. You can be so grateful and in love and just happy with the stage of life that you're in, but also feel overwhelmed, anxious, tired, like all of that. And sometimes hating it. Like, why is this part so hard? Both of those can coexist, and it's okay to talk about it with other women, because I think it helps normalize that it doesn't make you a bad mom. It just makes you a human being who needs some sleep and a good meal,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I want to add one thing, because I like your postpartum plan of like having some people. I always
Yeah.
teach as well, when we're talking really specifically about postpartum mental health disorders or perinatal, like the depression, the anxiety, maybe out of those people that you trust or that are in it with you, or it could be just someone else who spends time with you or around you. I typically say maybe not your birth partner, your spouse, whoever's raising baby with you, because they too can be struggling with some of their own things.
Yeah.
But I'm like, find a person and let them know, or ask like, hey, I want you to be a person for me that has total freedom to say, I'm checking in. I'm a little worried about you. Like someone who has that kind of blank check to come to you and say, are you all right? Are you sure you're okay? Like,
And for real, like for
yeah,
real, are you all
yes.
right?
No, where
Yeah.
you're literally saying, I want you to be the person who
Mhm.
has the freedom to ask me the hard questions because I think I need someone like that. So, and it's not that your spouse or the other parent, whoever that is, can't be that person, but they actually end up with kind of sometimes postpartum depression or what is it called? The partner
It's
postpartum
putrescence. Yeah.
depression. Yeah, thank you. There's
Well,
like
I'm also
they can also have postpartum mental health issues as well and struggle with transition. So you should be supporting each other, but we don't always see each other when we're in the
yeah.
midst of that because we're both caught up in our own thing. So
Yeah.
maybe one of those friends, Lord willing, if you have some of those ones in it with you, ask one of them or the closest one to
Mhm.
you or the one who comes over 3 days a week and you do your playtime together, whatever, and say, you have the freedom to speak into my life and I want you to do that for me. Would you be comfortable and like willing to be that person? So that's my little add on
I
to
love that.
the postpartum plan that you
That's
just
so
mentioned.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm guessing, but correct me if I'm wrong. Why don't you mentioned your book once or twice. Are some of these plans and things inside of it? Like tell us a little bit more about your book. And then, I mean, we know we can find you at the Baby Chick, but where we can find you, where people can find your book too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yes. So I basically wanted to write a guide that I wanted every expecting woman to have because I know not everyone can hire a baby planner or a doula, and I get that. So I was like, but I still want you to have this information. So basically, it is a roadmap of each week, each month, each trimester of things to think about. And because a lot of times people are like, well, I had no idea that was an option for me. And so it's just letting you know at this point, maybe start thinking about these things. And it's oftentimes a lot earlier than what people think because the first trimester, you're feeling like you're just trying to survive. Second trimester, you're feeling great and you're maybe doing like the fun stuff of planning the stuff. And then third trimester, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to birth a human and go through postpartum. And no, we want to like spread all of this out for you. Again, practical tips for partners. And what's really cool, what I wanted to do different about my book is that it comes with a book. You get free access inside my app and it has all of the printables and all of the exercises, meditations, recipe cards, everything, because I look at how a woman is holistically, not just the information, but also your mindset, your nutrition, how you're moving your body, how you're working with your partner. So yeah, it's a whole thing to make sure that you're feeling just that much more prepared throughout your pregnancy so that you can be ready for birth and postpartum.
So obviously we can find your book on the web, on your website, your
Yes,
social media
that's I think
account,
the
all the
easiest. I think
places.
that's
What do you
yeah,
think?
the easiest
Yeah.
place for sure is my website, baby-chick.com, available at all major retailers. And yeah, and then hit me up on social at the baby chick and send me a DM. I'd love to chat. And I love it. I'm here for all of you.
You have a podcast as well, don't you?
Yes, ma'am. Chick Chat, where we
Chick Chat.
chat with amazing experts and mothers and talking all about trying to conceive, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, motherhood, all of the things.
Okay, perfect. Last question I ask everyone before they go. What is something in your life right now that's just bringing you a ton of joy? And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be about babies, but it can be,
my
whatever.
goodness. Oh my goodness. The thing that's bringing me the ton of joy. So recently I just did my book launch. And what was so cool, Lo, is I invited all of my previous clients, and some of them, these kids are teenagers. They're in high school. And so I had a bunch of them come and they're taller than me. So what brought me so much joy is seeing my babies not be babies. Like one mom texted me a picture of me holding her twins in my arms and then me taking a picture of them standing next to me and just watching how these families are really growing and evolving and being a part of their story and helping families just start on the right foot and know that there's support out there available to you, whether that's me or somebody else. There is support out there and I want that for you. So that's, I think, what's bringing me joy is seeing the full circle moments.
I love that. It's awesome. Well, thank you so much for this hour of your life today. I know you are busy and you did just launch. It's been fun to kind of go through your book. And since I have a copy and I love to just see the way that people just see the things that people think should matter to you. Right. And like you said, you're so holistic with it. And I appreciate that of saying this isn't just about learning the stages of labor, like we've talked about here. This is also about your body. And this is also about your heart. And this is also about how you're eating and how you're hydrating and just really,
Yes.
it can
'Cause
feel
you were
overwhelming, but
growing
having
more
the
than a
guide.
baby. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. You were
Yeah.
growing
I
the
mean,
mother inside you, and you have to
yeah.
prepare for her too.
Yeah. Well, the book is gorgeous, what I've gotten to go through so far. And yeah, I just hope that launch is going well and that it does get into more hands, because I think it's a really great guide for someone to have next to them.
I'm so grateful, Lo. Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. I'm so grateful for all of the work that you do for families too. It's so inspiring. It's just awesome to be around other women who are doing incredible work for families out there.
Thanks, Nina. Back at you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Lo and Behold podcast. I hope there was something for you in today's episode that made you think, made you laugh, or made you feel seen. For show notes and links to the resources, freebies, or discount codes mentioned in this episode, please head over to loandbeholdpodcast.com. If you aren't following along yet, make sure to tap subscribe or follow in your podcast app so we can keep hanging out together. And if you haven't heard it yet today, you're doing a really good job. A little reminder for you before you go. Opinions shared by guests of this show are their own and do not always reflect those of myself and the Labor Mama platform. Additionally, the information you hear on this podcast or that you receive via any linked resources should not be considered medical advice. Please see our full disclaimer at the link in your show notes.